When we last left you, the sun was setting on CiderCon 2020 in Oakland, California. It was my first trip to the West Coast and took place mere weeks before everything changed across the world. In mid-March, the entire world shut down, some places for a few weeks and other places for many months. To say the time was chaotic and unpredictable was an understatement. Lockdowns and quarantines had differing effects on people. It was incredibly difficult not being able to get together and share moments in person. To its credit, the cider community found ways to stick together virtually through the remainder of 2020 and into 2021. Cider Summit took their tasting events online by partnering with online cider retailer Press Then Press. CiderCon was held online rather than in Chicago in February 2021. However, by the spring of 2021, people were ready to come back together and share bottles of cider in person. GlintCap 2021 was delayed until August and felt like something that had to be accomplished rather than the celebration of amazing cider I experienced at the 2019 event. It was, however, the beginning of the return to normalcy. CiderCon returned to an in-person experience in 2022 in Richmond, Virginia, with a number of pandemic-related modifications and a huge dose of cautiousness. Let's dive in and look back at the time the fog began to lift. My name is Jay Cooper, and I'm the CEO and founder of Cider Finder, an app designed to bring cider makers and enthusiasts a little bit closer. I'm on a journey around the United States to meet cider makers, visit cideries, find fans of hard cider, and learn as much as I can about one of the strongest segments of the alcohol industry in this country. Come along with me on my travels from coast to coast as I attend the biggest events in hard cider in America to learn as much as I can about the industry and all of the steps between fruit on tree and liquid in bottle. There's a lot more going on behind the curtain than you realize. I'm on a quest to learn everything I possibly can and become the Cider Finder. Well, good morning. It's my first full day here in Richmond, Virginia for CiderCon 2022. Yes, it's finally back in person. It's finally off the internet. It's a great feeling to be back and to be around other cider lovers and cider makers and enthusiasts this entire week here in Virginia. It's my first time in Virginia, so kind of like 2 years ago out in California, I'm gonna make the most of it and try to make it to as many cider makers as possible. After arriving in Richmond late due to flight delays, it was an early morning on a tour bus heading west into the mountains for the Albemarle County Cider Tour. We were set to visit 3 different cider makers: Castle Hill Cider, Potter's Craft Cider, and Albemarle Cider Works. I wasn't familiar with the first 2 prior to my visit, but I'd had plenty of Albemarle cider from my experience previously at GlintCap, a competition where Albemarle Cider Works enters several ciders each year, and their cider maker serves behind the scenes. Our first stop was Castle Hill Cider, an orchard and cidery set in a picturesque valley northeast of Charlottesville. The group was shuttled from the tour bus into the main building on the property, which contained the tasting room, a large event space, and some office space. Our group was led into the event space to sample nearly the entire line of products in Castle Hill's inventory, including their own Pommeau. My favorite cider from Castle Hill was called Serendipity, a blend of Harrison and Black Twig apples grown on site in the Castle Hill orchards. After sampling, we got a chance to check out the Quavery, buried a few hundred feet from the tasting room. These clay vessels from Georgia and Eastern Europe are used to age some of their ciders and gives the ciders aged in them a unique, slightly earthy note that complements the apples used in the ciders. After a short walk outside, we were back on the bus and heading to the next stop, Potter's Craft Cider. Potter's was located in an old church building perched on the top of a mountain. The bus led us off at the bottom of the hill, and it was up to the group to scale the hill for cider refreshment. When the group reached the summit and went inside, we were greeted by a large tap room and a wide selection of bottles and cans for sale. They had an impressive selection of ciders on tap and were willing to open nearly every canned or bottled option for tasting as well.
Our group found seats in the tasting room and were presented with a sample of cider and a charcuterie box for lunch. I'd had breakfast pretty early that morning, so food was a welcome sight and helped line the gut for sampling at Potter's and our next stop. Potter's was the only cidery of the three we visited that didn't lean heavily into dry, single varietal ciders, which I enjoyed. After the sample we were given by staff was gone, I opted to get a flight from the bar. There were so many ciders to choose from, so I got a nice variety of different flavors to try so I could get the best sampling experience possible. The floral and citrusy ciders are usually my go-to varieties, and Potter's didn't disappoint. If we had visited in the fall rather than the winter, the outdoor patio would have been perfect to complement these ciders. I could have spent hours at Potter's, but we soon had to board the bus to get to our next stop. Our next and final stop of the tour was Albemarle Cider Works, one of the oldest continually operating cideries in Virginia. Like Castle Hill, Albemarle Cider Works grows the apples they use in their ciders in their on-site orchard. Albemarle focuses mainly on single varietal ciders, producing ciders with only one type of apple, as opposed to most ciders, which are blends of multiple apple varieties. The group was split in half. My group went into the tasting room first, while the other half walked over to the on-site production facility. We were able to sample several of Albemarle's ciders and warm up by the fireplace. They had award-winning ciders on display and, as with the other two stops, had bottles for sale. After 30 minutes, the group switched, and I was able to check out the production facility. It was pretty awesome seeing everything from the massive cider press to the tanks and the bottling machines. When we visited, the tanks were full of fermenting cider, not yet ready for bottling. Our group could have spent hours out in the orchard and in the tasting room, but the sun was starting to set and we needed to make the drive back to Richmond. I had a bottle or pack of cans from each stop in the small cooler I brought along. Goodies to take home and enjoy after the trip.
And so now today, it's always kind of a weird day off in between the tours and the real meat of the convention on Thursday and Friday. So today is just kind of a planning day to figure out what I'm going to be doing the rest of the week, looking through the schedule that CiderCon has provided, see which people actually made it due to COVID restrictions. I know a lot of people either weren't able to make it because, especially the folks from other countries, weren't able to make it because of all the restrictions due to COVID-19. Some people in the States chose not to come due to health reasons, or I heard on the tour that some people had to cancel last minute because they came down with the virus. So stuff happens. So it's unfortunate. So it's, at this point, probably not the best to try to plan ahead a ton.
I usually spend Wednesday planning for the rest of the convention and doing a bit of sightseeing. You might as well enjoy the city you're visiting if you have some downtime. I also try to make it to as many local cideries as possible, if they are within walking distance or just a short ride share away. There was one such tasting room open Wednesday afternoon, just a few blocks from my hotel, Bryant's Hard Cider. The tasting room was tucked in a small storefront and only had a few seats, so I grabbed one of the stools and checked out the menu. They offered flights, so I was able to try every cider available between a flight of 3 followed by a flight of 4. I had a great chat with the staff and got to see some of their production equipment tucked into the back room. I was only able to spend a couple of hours there because the cider share started at the end of the afternoon. The cider share was split into 2 sessions due to the social distancing rules at the time. I actually thought it made the experience a bit more enjoyable, not having to fight through throngs of people just to sample cider. It really was the opposite of the hallway experience just 2 years prior in Oakland. Like every CiderCon, I picked one ticketed tasting per day. On Thursday, I opted for the cider and food pairing session called Creating Consumer Excitement with Food Pairing Suggestions. I had done one of these before where cider was paired with different dishes. This version of the event involved 4 different ciders, but instead of the different dishes, we were given a box with a hodgepodge of crackers, cheeses, vegetables, and other assorted flavors. The task was to examine how different ciders interacted with foods and seasonings that utilized different taste buds, so that cider taprooms could pair their ciders with appropriate foods. I feel like I learned more from this session than the previous one with dishes already prepared. My other tasting session involved southern cider apples, since we were technically in the South for this CiderCon. There were 2 rounds of 3 ciders each in this tasting, grouped together specifically to compare and contrast the locations throughout the South where the cider apples were grown and the ciders were made. I recognized a couple of the cider makers, but I was glad we were trying ciders from makers who I hadn't had a chance to try previously. Tasting options weren't limited to southern cider makers. As usual, the Michigan Cider Association had a trailer of cider parked in the middle of the trade show exhibit hall, stocked with a great selection of beverages. Not to be outdone, the Virginia Cider Association set their trailer up directly across from the Michigan trailer. It was fun going back and forth gathering samples and chatting with friends in the networking area. The New York Cider Association also had a random pop-up event in the exhibit hall with about a dozen cider makers setting up tables and giving out samples to those who attended. After the official convention wrapped up, there was a pizza party and one last cider pop-up event at a local restaurant in a converted service station. By this point, people had kind of given up on the masking and social distancing farce, as we were crammed shoulder to shoulder both inside the building and out in the parking lot, trying to avoid the occasional rain shower that evening. The cider and conversation flowed late into the night, as this pop-up event almost felt like the Cider Share in 2020. This specific pop-up felt like an amazing return to normalcy after 2 long years.
So this is kind of a bonus recording. This is Saturday morning. CiderCon 2022 is officially over, but I'm sticking around for one more day because there are a few more places I want to visit today. We'll do a little sightseeing and hit a couple more cideries here locally before I get back on a plane tomorrow morning. So it was a blast. It was amazing to see everyone meet so many new people, just reconnect with all sorts of cider makers and enthusiasts and everyone who I've had a chance to make connections with over the last 3-4 years that I've been traveling around, going to different cider events. You know, even with the pandemic, kind of squashing some of that for a good 15-16 months, kind of in the middle there. So. Just a great feeling to be back around like-minded people and people who just enjoy cider, enjoy life, and just, you know, want things to start moving forward again. So it's just good for all of us.
The plan for Saturday was to do a bit more sightseeing, and in the afternoon and evening, make it to a neighborhood with 2 cideries, a meadery, and several restaurant options within about a 6-block area to round things out. Buskey Cider was my first stop, where I ran into cider friends having one last round before heading home, and had a couple of small cider flights to get a good sampling of their cider. The Buskey Dry and the Cherry Cider were the 2 best ciders at that stop. After that, I walked around the corner to Blue Bee Cider, a location where I'd stopped with a large group earlier in the week, but only had one cider while I was there. I wanted to get a better experience, plus try a grilled cheese sandwich from the cheese shop in the same building. I had the Scott's Edition flight, named for the neighborhood where the cidery was located, and finished things off with a full pour of the aplum cider. Blackheath Meadery was my 3rd stop in the neighborhood, and, like the 2 cideries I visited, I grabbed a flight of their most popular meads. Even though mead is its own thing, it tends to have a lot of crossover with cider fans, as a lot of meads tend to be made with fruit adjuncts. It's a beverage category that's quickly growing on me. I finished the evening off with some Asian food at a restaurant just a stone's throw from both cideries and the meadery. You couldn't ask for a better way to finish off an interesting but successful trip to CiderCon. While there were still some remnants of the pandemic, nearly 2 years old at the time of the convention, almost everything had returned to normal, possibly better than it had been before. I hope to make it back to Virginia again during a warmer time of year so I can experience more of the outdoor features that weren't really available during my time there. It's true. Virginia is for cider lovers.